Notre Dame just wrapped up its biggest scrimmage of fall camp, and we are still waiting on a starting quarterback to be announced. How much longer will we have to wait? We're going to talk about that, plus all the latest buzz from fall camp, which is 2 weeks to go before the Irish take on Miami. That's next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish for the past 5 years. Today is Monday, August 18th, and thank you for starting your work week by making this your first watch or listen of the day. Before we get rolling, this is your reminder to subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow along wherever you listen to podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, we have got a lot to cover as fall camp winds down for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. First, I'm going to take you inside Sunday's Jersey scrimmage and explain why no starting quarterback has been announced yet, despite all the online rumors flying around over the weekend. Then we're going to break down how some other position battles are shaking out on offense, talk about some guys who are continuing to shine, like Eli Raridon is a guy who came up. Mike Denbrock even called him elite. We're going to explain why, and we'll close it out with some special teams news, including a potential new wrinkle in the return game that I am super excited about. But let's get into what happened on Sunday. Notre Dame held their annual Jersey scrimmage. It's a competition between the offense and the defense. The coaches have created a scoring system, and the defense won the day. This is their longest scrimmage of fall camp. They had over 100 plays, ton of reps with the ones. I mean, some guys were being held out, but this was as big as it gets in fall camp. Fall camp is not officially over, but it is certainly winding down now that this scrimmage is behind them. And as I said, the defense won the day, which has been the story of fall camp. This is not a huge surprise, though. Notre Dame had a top 5 defense in the country last year, and even though they bring in a new defensive coordinator, they brought back the same D-line coach, linebackers coach, and defensive backs coach, plus a ton of talent and returning production from last season. Meanwhile, the offense is still finding its footing. They're trying to figure out who's going to be the starting quarterback, and no matter if it's Kenny Minchey or CJ Carr, whoever wins that job has never played meaningful snaps in college. So it's a different situation, but Marcus Freeman and both coordinators spoke to the media after practice, and there was a lot to take away from that. And we're going to dive into all of that on today's show. But the biggest news is that there is no news at the quarterback position. Going into camp, I thought that this scrimmage might be the point where a starter would be announced. I felt like the 2 full weeks that they would have at the beginning of camp would give them enough time to figure out who was the better option, and then it would give them 2 full weeks with the starter, whoever that ended up being, to prepare for Miami. History seemed to back that up. Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated pointed out that Freeman is named a starter by August 14th, and also Brian Kelly as well, in each of the 5 previous camps when there was a quarterback battle. So this is going on a little bit longer than expected, but by last Friday, it kind of became clear that this decision was dragging out a little bit, and by Sunday morning, I did not expect an announcement, even though message boards and social media were certainly buzzing over the weekend. In case you are not chronically online or you just missed it, you're not super tuned into all the message boards, we just kind of explain what happened. There were some reports from different outlets, credible outlets, that Marcus Freeman was going to go with Kenny Minchey as the starting quarterback, but it was not a unanimous decision. This report generated so much traction and multiple different sites reported on it that Notre Dame had to come out and issue a statement that no official decision has been made. And I'm guessing, just based on the tone and what I understand of the Notre Dame football program, I don't think that they were too pleased with how everything went down. But the funniest part, in my opinion, the original report came from a guy posting on a message board, which happens, right? But then that person logged out of that account. They logged into a second account on the same message board to confirm his own post. Fans quickly figured that out. They identified who he was, and let's just say he has not been very active online since, but I just thought that was a hilarious thing, and it's just kind of perfect message board chaos that happens. But anyway, I just thought that was funny. I do believe that Marcus Freeman and the coaching staff are being honest in saying that they have not made a final decision. Marcus Freeman reiterated that in his press conference. Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, backed it up. But now we're looking at under 2 weeks away from the season opener, and Marcus Freeman even admitted, like, they got to make a decision here soon. But when all these reports are going around over the weekend, it didn't make any sense to me at the time why the staff would decide a starter before the biggest scrimmage of camp which is going to be held on Sunday. Like, if all these rumors are circulating on Friday, like, why? There's just no benefit to that. Why would you name the starter after this competition when you're kind of putting everything into the scrimmage on Sunday? Even if one person had separated themselves last week, which certainly could be true, you have to let it all play out first before making a final decision. But now that the Jersey scrimmage is over, Marcus Freeman is going to have to make a decision soon. I expect we're going to find out in the coming days. And look, I understand the angst from the fan base about the fact that they have not announced a starter. Trust me, I am very excited to move on from the topic. I've talked about this quarterback battle seemingly every day on the show since January of this year, and it was pretty funny. I was at a Notre Dame wedding this weekend. Shout out to the Woodings. Love Charlie and Meg. They had a beautiful ceremony. A lot of Notre Dame people there in attendance, and the quarterback battle was a big talking point outside of, obviously, how great the wedding was and how everyone looked amazing and all that. But I think everyone is just ready for this to be over. I'm sure that the coaching staff is ready to move on. But I also respect the staff for being extremely thorough in their evaluation, and they're letting a real competition play out, which is exactly what it should be. Denbrock even said they're not as freaked out about not naming a guy because they trust the guys involved. They know their teammates like both guys, and they can win with either. And I agree. Marcus Freeman even pointed out a positive that I hadn't really thought a whole lot about. He said that the nice thing about having this quarterback competition go on is that if whoever is the starter, if they end up getting hurt, right, whoever the backup is, the whole offense, they're going to be comfortable working with him because they've been doing it throughout camp. They've been splitting up the reps about as evenly as they possibly can, and I think they both have elevated their play because of the competition, and that bodes well for the entire team. So these two guys have been battling it out for a long time. I'm sure it has been extremely stressful for them, and really just the grind of fall camp is tough on everyone. Marcus Freeman was given his press conference, and I saw some people talking about, wow, he looks really tired or frustrated. I think he's just kind of exhausted, and it's rare to ever see Marcus Freeman not be at like 100% enthusiastic energy all the time, but like they've just been going at it every single day for 2 weeks, plus the preparation that goes into camp before they even start. Like, these guys are probably pretty tired. They just were outside in the heat and humidity. By all accounts, it was extremely hot and humid in South Bend on Sunday. So I think that they kind of caught Marcus Freeman in just a tough moment for him coming off the field, doing the press conference after being out there in the heat and during a very intense scrimmage. But even though, we're kind of nearing the end of camp, the season's getting close, I don't think that the decision has been made yet. But I will say the buzz around Kenny Minchey has certainly picked up over the past week. Multiple reports and people who I've spoken with say that he had the better weekend. That does not guarantee anything. But if I had to guess today, I would be pretty surprised if Minchey is not the starter against Miami. I think one thing that's been very impressive about him and the way he's carried himself throughout this entire process is he's very even-keeled. Never gets too high, never gets too low. And that's a valuable trait for any quarterback, but especially one who is going to make his first start on the road in a hostile environment against a top 10 team. You need to be able to trust that your quarterback is not going to let the momentum swings of the game bother him and that he can just go out there and execute like he's supposed to. This would obviously be a change from what I've been saying throughout the offseason, even as recently as last week. Tim Murray and I predicted who would take more snaps this season at quarterback, C.J. Carr, Kenny Minchey. We both said C.J. Carr. I've said all offseason I expected C.J. Carr to eventually win the job, and I wasn't alone. But I am thrilled for Minchey because by all accounts, he's a great teammate. He's worked really hard. He's put himself in this position, and even if it's not official, what he has done to get to this point is extremely impressive. And I think that Notre Dame is honestly in a great position. They cannot go wrong with either option. And even when they do make the call, things are going to happen. There's going to be a lot more that we can talk about. And when Freeman does make the call, it will be his decision. He clarified that in his press conference. He said he's going to lean on Gino Guidugli, the quarterback's coach. He's going to obviously hear from his offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock, and the rest of his staff. But he made clear that the final word is his. Until then, we wait. All right, we still have a lot more to get to on the offense side of the ball. Then we're going to flip it over to the defense. Coming up, find out why Mike Denbrock called one player frustrating and another elite. That's next. Today's episode is brought to you by DripDrop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts. And that's where DripDrop comes in. DripDrop is doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. I have tried a lot of electrolyte powders, but nothing tastes as good or works as fast as DripDrop. DripDrop has become my go-to, especially during long summer days or when I wake up feeling dehydrated. It's also great to have before or after a workout. That way you can push yourself while staying hydrated. Right now, DripDrop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to DripDrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's DripDrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. If you've been watching or listening to the show throughout camp, you know that the quarterback battle is not the only position battle on offense. The battle at right guard continues, and it has been very intense between Sullivan Absher and Gerby Lambert. Marcus Freeman pointed out that 4 of the 5 spots in the offensive line are locked in. You know you're going to see Anthony Knapp at left tackle, Billy Schroth at left guard, Ashton Craig at center, and Emil Wagner at right tackle. But it is a battle between Sullivan Absher and Gerby Lambert to start at right guard, and really, I feel like the coaching staff loves both these guys, and this feels like a can't-lose scenario, and both these guys bring different things to the table. They both have great size. I think Absher's 6'8", Lambert 6'7", 335 pounds. That is not an issue. Sullivan Absher is a little bit older, more experienced in the sense that he's been in college longer. Gerby Lambert might have a higher ceiling. He's a borderline 5-star recruit a couple years ago, freak athlete, but his natural position is tackle, and they're moving him to guard because he's just that good, and they want to give him a chance to get on the field. The fact that he is even in this position in his second season with the program at a position that is not his natural position, and he's coming off labrum surgery that he had in the spring is really impressive. And I know that the coaching staff is really pleased with what they have seen from both these guys, and at this point, I could see it going either way. I thought that Sullivan Absher was going to end up being the starting right guard going into camp, and I think that the coaching staff is even a little bit surprised at how quickly Gerby Lambert has put himself in this spot, but I could honestly see it going either way. This is probably a coin flip at this point. Either way, Notre Dame is in a good spot there. The real interesting question I have, though, is what will happen once Charles Jagusah returns from injury, because they have 2 guys competing for this job right now. Going into camp before Charles Jagusah got hurt, he was the presumed starter at the position. I don't even think there was any debate. Like when I did my top 5 players on the team, when I did that exercise in a show a few weeks ago on a top 5 Friday, I put Charles Jagusah at number 3. Okay, I was that high on him, and I think a lot of that is projection-based, but also what he showed he could do in the college football playoff after missing the entire season, coming in and then being just unbelievable at guard against Penn State, especially after Penn State had dominated Notre Dame in the line of scrimmage throughout the first half. But let's say whoever wins, Sullivan Absher or Gerby Lambert, if they come out and they're playing well, and then Charles Jagusah comes back from his injury, like what do you do? Do you bench one of these guys who's been playing well, who's been doing everything that they need to do to get out on the field and then execute properly? Well, if you do that, you might be sitting one of your best players in the entire team. Like that is going to be a very interesting storyline that we're going to track later on, but just something that I was thinking about. Other notes from the offense from hearing Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock speak. Nolan James Jr., man, he keeps popping up. He's battling Aeneas Williams for the 3rd running back spot behind Jeremiyah Love and Jadarian Price. It is my understanding that he has already surpassed Jabron Payne. Keedron Young, obviously out for the season due to an injury, but I can't believe he's even competing for playing time this early on, because I really liked him as a high school recruit, but I just felt like the Notre Dame running back room was so loaded that the idea of a freshman who was going to come in and just make a role for himself right away seemed like a bit of a reach, but that is not the case right now. He's firmly in the mix now. I should point out, Aeneas Williams has been dealing with an elbow injury. It hasn't been described as too serious, but it's something that has made him a limited participant in some of these practices. I think he re-injured it in the scrimmage on Sunday, but waiting for official report there. Either way, it's a battle between Aeneas Williams and Nolan James Jr., but Nolan James Jr. is not the only freshman who might see the field this year. Elijah Burris is another guy who we've been talking about since the spring, freshman wide receiver, but Mike Denbrock had some interesting words when he was asked about Elijah Burris. He called him, quote, an incredibly frustrating player to coach. And he would go on to say that Burris' talent is obvious. He knows how to win in space. He understands the game, but he's just not consistent with the playbook yet. And that was Denbrock's public message that, hey, Elijah, we know you're elite, but you're going to have to lock in order to get on the field. So based on those comments, I'm guessing that we probably won't see too much of Elijah Burris against Miami, because if the coaching staff does not trust you to be where you need to be and make all the right decisions when you're out there on the field, they're not going to play you, especially against a top 10 team on the road. I think they're going to rely more on Micah Gilbert and KK Smith as the 5th and 6th guys that they'll need early on. But Mike Denbrock, even though he called Burris frustrating to coach, he said he's going to be really, really good. So coaches do that sometimes. I know that kind of sounded harsh in the moment, especially directed at a true freshman, but I think that Burris has put himself in a position where, the average expectations for a true freshman kind of go out the door with him. And they're going to hold him to a higher standard because they know just how good of a player he can be. So yeah, it might seem like intense comments from the OC about a freshman, but hey, I think it shows that he knows how special of a player he is, and he's just trying to get him to focus more on that playbook, make sure he knows exactly where he needs to be at all times, and that way the coaching staff can trust him enough, and then he can go out there and make plays on Saturdays because he's been making a lot of plays in practice. One other quick note on the wide receivers. I am buying all the Logan Saldate stock that one can physically buy. Unfortunately, I can't actually do that. But for the sake of this discussion, I just want to say that Logan Saldate is a name that also keeps popping up. I don't think that he's going to have a role this season. There's just too many guys in front of him, a lot of veteran guys, especially at the slot position, which is where he plays. You've got Will Pauling. You've got Jaden Greathouse. So he's probably third in that spot, but he had another big play on Saturday. He had a really great week of practice this past week, and even if he doesn't have a huge impact this year, I think he's going to have a big impact next year and beyond. He could be a really good player for Notre Dame. One player who is going to make a big impact this season is Eli Raridon. Mike Denbrock doubled down on his comments from the spring. He called Raridon elite once again. The buzz around him has been nonstop, and it's great because he's healthy. We've had these really high hopes for him for a really long time. Mike Denbrock keeps saying he sees Raridon as the next great tight end, and it actually reminded me of something I remember hearing about some of the first reports from spring practice when Mike Denbrock made his return to Notre Dame last season, first season back as the offensive coordinator. I remember hearing that Denbrock was all over Raridon in practice, constantly yelling at him because not only does Mike Denbrock coach the offensive coordinator, or he's not just the offensive coordinator, he also coaches, he's the tight end coach as well. And he was really hard on Eli Raridon. And I think that Denbrock saw all the potential in Eli Raridon and want to make sure that he lived up to it. So even though he's really tough on him at the time, now he is tight end one. He's going to be the guy, and Raridon is building him up. I think that we're going to see Eli Raridon very early on in that Miami game. I think they're going to feed him because Notre Dame feels really good about him. I don't think the rest of the world is going to be expecting that much from him at this point in time. So maybe they'll be able to take advantage that Miami's defense is going to be focused on stopping Jeremiyah Love, Jadarian Price, Malachi Fields. They might forget about Eli Raridon, and that could be a huge, huge opportunity for the Notre Dame offense. Now, as for the defense, a couple news and notes there. Defensive tackle, I expect Donovan Heinisch and Jason Onye to start with Gabe Rubio and Dawson rotating in. We talked about that a little bit on the show last week, but the way that Marcus Freeman and the way that Chris Ash were talking about Jason Onye, Freeman said that this is the best camp that Onye has had in 4 years of being with the program. And then Chris Ash reiterated just nothing but great things about him and his journey. So he has a great opportunity now. Donovan Heinisch is a dog, an absolutely tireless worker. So if those guys are the first two out there, I still think we're going to see a heavy dose of Gabe Rubio and Jared Dawson as well. I think that, especially in the first game of the season and in the second game, when Notre Dame plays Miami and Texas A&M, it's going to be extremely hot. They're going to have to rotate these guys a lot. So I think it's going to be close to an even split, maybe not exactly, but I do think that's what they're going with there. Elijah Hughes, probably the fifth defensive tackle, and Armel Mukam, sixth. One interesting note on the defensive line, Jordan Botelho was a limited participant in the scrimmage. I can't believe he has been this active in camp coming off the torn pec injury that he suffered in the summer, but credit to him. Notre Dame has the luxury of giving him some time to come back, but once he does, they're going to be 6 deep at the defensive end position. That is just crazy, and certainly not the norm for Notre Dame, or at least not in recent years. Linebacker, Drake Bowen, Jalen Seed, they look like the starters. Kingsley Asa and Jane Osbury are obviously going to rotate in frequently. Heard that Jane Osbury had a really good scrimmage on Sunday, but these guys bring so many different things to the table. Max Bulla basically has 4 starters, but as Chris Ash pointed out, most of the time, it's only going to be 2 linebackers on the field. So Drake Bowen is probably not going to come off the field a whole lot. I think Jalen Seed is a guy that can do a bunch of different things. He can play weak side linebacker, or they can have him coming off the edge in third and long, obvious passing situations because we know how good he is there. But really, really excited about that Notre Dame linebacking core this year. They might be one of the best in the entire country. And then at safety, Ash and Freeman both highlighted how talented the group is. But Chris Ash admitted that it's tricky to rotate safeties too much because they are the key communicators back there. Jalen Stroman's experience could give him the edge over younger guys like Luke Talich and Tate Johnson, especially in week one when mistakes can be costly. Jalen Stroman had a lot of ground to make up because he was not able to participate in spring while he was recovering from his injury, but he played a lot of football at Virginia Tech, and I think that in this situation, especially going up against Miami, they're probably going to give him the starting nod. That would be my guess, but all these guys are going to play. And the coaches also raved about Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, and Cree Thomas. They have consistently run with the twos, and they're going to play some real snaps this fall. I'm not sure which one of these freshmen would be the first off the bench. My guess is it's either Dallas Golden or Mark Zachary. I'm not sure if it's going to be a situation like last year when Christian Gray went down and then Leonard Moore came in and then played the field corner, even though he's more of like a natural boundary corner. Would they have a situation where if Christian Gray goes down, are they more inclined to put Mark Zachary in as opposed to like if Leonard Moore goes down, would they then bring in Dallas Golden? Like, are they going to stick more to the natural field versus boundary, or are they just going to put the best guy of the three between Golden, Zachary, and Cree Thomas? Something that will be interesting to follow here. Notre Dame trusts freshman corners. We saw last year with Leonard Moore. Benjamin Morrison started as a true freshman, so this isn't a huge surprise that they've been this impressive this early, but I just can't wait to see what that group looks like down the road when you've got like Joey O'Brien and Kari Adams coming in. Like, the future is so bright for the Notre Dame defensive back room. And the most encouraging thing I've heard about this defense all camp, they are very, very violent. They play fast, they play physical, and they fly around. And it's not really a surprise that the offense has been struggling to move the ball consistently against this group because they are just that loaded, that talented, and they have the perfect mindset to be an elite defense. All right, coming up, is Notre Dame about to unleash Jeremiyah Love on kick returns? It's a real possibility. More on that right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That is exactly where Gametime comes in. It is the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they have got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming Major League Baseball game. Plus, if you're tired of endless scrolling to find the best deal, Gametime Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Are we really about to see Jeremiyah Love back there returning kicks? It is a serious possibility. Marty Biaggi mentioned it last week, the special teams coordinator, and Marcus Freeman confirmed they are considering Jeremiyah Love and Jadarian Price as kickoff returners. As you might recall, Jadarian Price handled return duties in 2023 and gave Notre Dame one of its biggest plays of the entire season with that touchdown against USC to put the game away. That moment in the game was so amazing because Caleb Williams had just led the Trojans down for a touchdown drive. They had cut the deficit to 11. It felt like they could mount a comeback, and then Jadarian Price just twisted the knife, ended the game in that moment. And we have seen time and time again that he is a big-time play waiting to happen, and I think he would be great on kickoff returns for the Irish this season. Love is obviously the more interesting one because he is one of the best players in the entire country. Notre Dame has been very open about the fact that they're trying to keep him rested as long as possible because last season he was not himself in the college football playoff, and he still had a 98-yard touchdown run against Indiana, one of the best plays of the entire college football postseason. And then he had the greatest 2-yard run in the history of football when he shed like 5 Penn State defenders on his way to the end zone. But I think that he should absolutely be back there returning kicks against Miami, Texas A&M, and USC because that would terrify opposing teams. And if you have both those guys back there, they might just kick it out of bounds. They might take the penalty because that would be much better than seeing either one of those guys with the ball in their hands in the open field. And we saw last year in the college football playoff just how a huge game can turn around with a big kick return. Jaden Harrison returned a touchdown against Georgia, and that was pretty much it because Notre Dame's defense was not allowing Gunnar Stockton and the Georgia Bulldogs to move the ball at all. So if they can get another play like that or two this season from either Jadarian Price or Jeremiyah Love, like I am all for it. I would say that Jadarian Price should probably be the primary guy, and then you bring in Jeremiyah Love against those bigger opponents, or if your team just needs a spark. But I am all for it. I understand the concern about wanting to protect him, but I think that the opportunity there is much greater, and I would love to see Jeremiyah Love taking a kickoff return to the house. We got some more updates on special teams as well. It appears that Noah Burnette is going to be the starting kicker for Notre Dame. Noah Burnette, the transfer from North Carolina. It was actually pretty funny in the moment when Marcus Freeman announced it. He slipped and accidentally called him Noah Grubbs, who is the quarterback recruit committed to Notre Dame in the class of 2026. And he even said, I hope that's not a violation, because technically coaches are not allowed to name recruits by name or really talk about them at all before they sign. But hopefully the NCAA is too occupied by not really handing down a hard enough punishment to Michigan to be caught up in the Noah Grubbs sweepstakes at Notre Dame. But anyway, this wasn't a surprise. Not exactly reassuring either, though, because Marcus Freeman said if the season started today, Noah Burnette would be our guy, which kind of leaves the door open for Eric Schmidt, the true freshman, to eventually win that job. And I just don't really think that Burnette separated himself from Eric Schmidt in the way that the coaching staff hoped that he would, because he's played 3 full seasons of college football now. And I just think that both guys have been inconsistent. That's a little bit expected out of a true freshman like Schmidt, but not so much Burnette, who is a transfer senior who's been around and done it. And even though he has experience, I don't think that they have a ton of trust in him right now. They just have more trust in Burnette, especially going into a hostile environment like Miami and kicking in that stadium. But I would not be shocked if Eric Schmidt got some field goal opportunities this season, especially if Noah Burnette struggles. This is something that Notre Dame needs to figure out quickly, especially with these huge early season games. The margin for error is extremely slim, and Noah Burnette did make a 50-yarder in that scrimmage, which is great, but the coaching staff said they needed to see more of that, which means that they haven't seen a whole lot of that in camp. And we saw last year with Mitch Jeter just how important it is to have a kicker in these close games. It started out against Texas A&M, came through in the clutch in that game, came through in the clutch against Indiana in the college football playoff, Georgia, Penn State. He had that miss in the national championship game, and that was pretty critical. So Notre Dame needs a kicker. I have been pretty vocal about my concerns about the kicker position throughout the offseason. I know that some people sort of scoff at that. They don't care it's a kicker, but when you need them, they matter a whole lot. And right now, I don't think Notre Dame has a ton of faith in their kicker. But maybe he goes out there, sees a couple go in against Miami. Maybe that gives him confidence, because he's done it before. Like, he went 19 of 20 a couple years ago when he was the kicker at North Carolina. And he was obviously great that season, but then 15 and 21 the 2 other years outside of that. So if he can just become more consistent, if the Notre Dame coaching staff trusts him, then he's got the job for all season. But if he struggles, don't be surprised to see Eric Schmidt. So what comes next for Notre Dame now that the Jersey scrimmage is behind them? So today, they're going through a full game rehearsal inside Notre Dame Stadium. You could call it dress rehearsal, whatever you want to call it. It's not a scrimmage, but they're going to go through all the game day operations, procedures, logistics on the field with the coaching staff in the booth, all of that. And then I expect captains to be named in the coming days. And it would not surprise me at all if the quarterback announcement happened around the same time. I don't know when Marcus Freeman's next press conference is going to be, but this might be something that just comes out on social media. We're going to find out here. Obviously, the team is going to find out first, but position battles are winding down. Prep for Miami is ramping up, and camp is finally almost over. I have to imagine, man, the players have to be itching to put this grind behind them and go hit somebody in a different jersey, because it really is a grind for these players. And the fact that they're almost through with it is very exciting. The season is almost here. I personally can't wait. And obviously, we're going to have you covered right here on Locked On Irish every single weekday morning with a new episode. But that is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Irish. Thanks again for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, like, rate, review. It really helps the show grow. I'm going to be back tomorrow, Tuesday, with a very special guest. You're going to want to tune in for that. Until then, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.